When you think about courts, a few images understandably might come to mind. Maybe a criminal trial, maybe the sweeping columns of the US Supreme Court, maybe Judge Judy, maybe a personal experience where you or a family member needed to go to housing court, or even one of the state's many specialty courts that deal with substance abuse disorders, mental health issues, or veterans issues. The John Adams Courthouse in downtown Boston, though a beautiful building, probably doesn't spring to mind first. But it's the home of the Supreme Judicial Court, the state's highest court, where 7 justices split their time between weighing in on first-degree murder appeals and juggling some of the fundamental questions of our state constitution. I'm Jennifer Smith, and this is the Codcast, Commonwealth Beacon's podcast about policy and civic life here in Massachusetts. And along with housing, the courts are one of my main beats. So when I sat down with Chief Justice Kimberly Budd last week in a West Roxbury District Court, just before she sat in on a session of a special court that diverts people convicted of crimes away from trial and toward recovery services, a few things were on my mind. The Chief Justice has been in her post since 2020, after the death of Chief Justice Ralph Gants. She grew up in Peabody, daughter of former U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts Wayne Budd. As is very typical in Massachusetts, she was nominated to posts along the way up to the High Court by governors of both major parties. Not so typical, Budd is the first Black woman to be Chief Justice of the High Court. We wanted to have a discussion about why people lose faith in the justice system, why it matters that the Massachusetts budget may be hundreds of millions of dollars short on what's needed to fund state courts, the personal legacy of her predecessor, Chief Justice Gants, and why the most powerful jurist in the state misses the trial courts. So, let's hear that conversation. So, we are here in West Roxbury District Court. Why?
Well, one of the things that I think is really important for me to do as chief is to get out and about and see what's happening in the community. We are downtown Boston in the John Adams Courthouse, which is beautiful, but very, very quiet. And you really don't see the hustle and bustle. You don't see what's happening. And certainly one of the things I really miss is being a trial court judge and, seeing the community. But as chief, I think it's important for me to get out and actually see what's happening, and make sure that the people in the trial courts know that the SJC knows that they're there, knows that they're doing a great job. Want to hear whether there are any issues that have come up for them that we can help with, and just to say, hey, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's really important work. And yeah, so it's nice to get out. It's nice to see people. And it appears to me that everyone working in the court system knows how important their job is, knows how important community courts are. And yeah, it's just great to see firsthand.
And is there a different viewpoint that tends to show up more in the trial courts versus the SJC? Obviously, we're talking about on the ground versus the 30,000-foot view, but what is the tether that you're trying to make sure is maintained between the trial court system and your current role?
So, the SJC, one of the things we do is general superintendent. So we're in charge of the court system. And so we need to know what's happening. And like you said, the work that we do, the appellate work, is very different from what happens in the trial courts. The appellate process, that's sort of the end of the road. We look at transcripts, the trial has happened, and we just look to see, have there been any mistakes. Trial courts are where people come, and certainly state courts, have the majority of business, in terms of the community. And so you have people coming in with all sorts of issues, likely the lowest point of their lives, and looking for help. And so that's real. The judges, the clerks, probation officers, they are able to affect real change, really help people who are coming in looking for help. And the SJC is, I feel privileged to be there, but the work we do is more policy type work. We're interpreting statutes, making the common law, and yeah, it's a completely different thing that I have come to appreciate, the importance of. But again, it's a bit removed from day to day.
Well, one thing that really stands out to me as you talk about that is, of course, most people experience the court system if they are coming into contact with the trial court system, if someone they know or love is coming into contact with those systems. The SJC can seem a bit removed for plenty of people, even though obviously it has a very significant policy role. It's the state's high court. So, how are you thinking about the role of a system that most people hope they never ever touch, because we're in a moment right now where the question of, are courts political bodies? Are they advocacy bodies? Are they subbing in for, say, mental health systems that should be more robust? How are you thinking about making the court system something that presumably is not something that everybody comes into contact with, but when they do, feels more humane than its reputation or its history?
So that's a broad question. To start, when I think about trial courts and when I think about them now, and I'm sure we've got a lot of specialty courts, precisely because people come in with issues that are not just, legal issues. They come in with all sorts of things going on in their lives that they need help with. And I think that the people in the court system have come to understand that it makes sense to try to help them with the adjacent issues, because they are a lot of the reason that they're in court in the first place. So, for example, this Recovery with Justice session that's going to happen later on today. People with mental health issues get into trouble with the law, and it's because of the mental health issues that they're in the space that they're in, and the court helps them by making sure that they get mental health treatment. If they are homeless, if they need, other types of supports, they get them. And so that just allows them to sort of stabilize. And yeah, I was talking to the first justice of this court, Kathy Coffey. This program here started in 2014. 200 or so people have come through the Recovery with Justice specialty court, and I think she said it was like a 16% recidivism rate. That's a big deal, you know? So it's important because it works, you know?
And of course, a lot of the work of the trial courts does depend on capacity. We're talking right now in June, if I have my month right, and we are in the middle of budget season right now, and there is a large question about whether or not the courts are sufficiently funded to do the work that we are asking them to do. It's a bit of a leading question because, of course, there's already been some discussion about what sorts of funding the court system would like to see come through this budget process and the level of strain here. So giving you the floor on this one. What are you hoping to see? And is the governor's budget or what we've seen so far from the chambers meeting the needs that you're seeing?
So I want to say first that we really appreciate the partnership that the judicial branch has had with the legislative and the executive branches. Um, as you know, the legislature is the one that sets our budget, and so we rely on them to give us the money that we need to make the system work. And we have Chief Justice Heidi Brieger and Court Administrator Tom Ambrosino have been to the State House many, many, many times to talk to the legislators to just impress upon them the importance of making sure that we have enough money to run the court system. And I have joined them in a couple of those meetings, and it's clear that there's not a question that legislators know that it's really important, that the work we do is important, and that we need the money in order to do it. But we also understand that these are really difficult times, and so we will see. We certainly hope that we will get enough to maintain the system. It's just it's a tough thing because we know that a lot of different agents, everybody's looking for the money they need to run their business, and obviously the courts are important, but there are a lot of different important things going on that need money.
That's exactly why I ask, because one thing that often happens during the budget debates is the average person sees these massive, massive numbers flying by and they have no idea what they actually correspond to. So I think it can be helpful sometimes to say, this amount of money that you're asking for is not for Chief Justice Budd's specific salary. It is to do XYZ. So maybe a little bit of Courts 101 here. What happens when the courts don't have the funding that they need?
Well, I will say that the bulk of the budget does go for salaries. So if we don't have the money we need to pay for personnel, and I'm talking about probation officers, court officers, people in the clerk's office, that means that the public will have less access to the courts and less access to justice. And so that's what we're talking about. And as we talked about before, people come in really needing help. And we want to be able to provide what they need. And so if we had to cut back on personnel, that could mean that could lead to issues with regard to safety, fewer probation officers, fewer court officers, and lead to less access to justice.
So in December, during your State of the Judiciary address, you talked about the risk of kind of losing faith in the judiciary as a system. It's been 6 months since then, so we're going to get into a conversation about sort of how that's happened and why that's changed. But what's your top line assessment now about how faith in the judicial system is going?
That's part of the reason I like to come out and visit the different trial courts, just to see what's happening firsthand. And the information I'm getting is that people in the court system feel good about what they're doing. I want to say that we're doing our very best to get the word out that we're actually here to help. Massachusetts state courts are here to help. But it's hard not everybody has firsthand contact with the courts. And so people may lump all courts together, across the country, state and federal. And so it's not that easy to get the message out that we really do. We really are trying to make sure that people get justice, that they get what they need. But it's hard. I can tell you that for example, jurors come in every day to different trial courts. Nobody's happy to be there. But if they are picked to be on a jury and have had the experience of hearing the testimony, sitting in the jury room together with people from all different backgrounds, and coming together to figure out what the facts are in the case and what should happen, they come out of it with a completely different feeling, attitude about the court system, and they feel really glad. They feel really good about having been a part of it. So, I mean, that's just an example, but it would be great if we could figure out a way to make sure that we get the word out. We really are here to help.
I'm curious because you were, I don't know if you put it this way, so correct me otherwise, but you were sort of raised into the legal system in many ways. Your father was the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts. So thinking about this thread of trust in the judicial system, does it feel the same now as it did when you were being raised near it, coming up through the court systems? Has it felt different nationally or in Massachusetts? What's that been like?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I can tell you I was not thinking about these things about, public trust in the court system, as a child. Um,
Probably normal.
right. And frankly, it has become important to me as a judge, as a trial court judge. It was important to me to, when people came into the courtroom, that they had at least a sense that I was there. I heard what they were saying. Their case was important. I think you will find that that's how judges sort of approach their work. And so, although there are rules, statutes, there's somebody, and I mean, it's hard because you're on the bench, you're up high, you're dressed in a black robe. Um, it's really important for them to understand we're people, and we are just trying to, uphold the rule of law. I think it's important for Massachusetts residents to understand that that's what we're about. It's very important. Um, that's it's a huge part of why our society works, the rule of law.
And you succeeded, and when going through this, it was interesting. Former Chief Justice Ralph Gantz, you succeeded him at the lower court level, and then also after a few years on the SJC, after you went up there, then of course after his death, you succeeded him as Chief Justice. I was at the portrait unveiling ceremony, and one of the things that really struck me was that you and your colleagues on the bench referred not just to his values and kind of a commitment to an equitable view of an application of law, but also a humor, a bit of mischievousness. And I wonder, what about his qualities as Chief Justice and a longtime peer and mentor have you tried to bring to your role? What of him do you still see in the bench through the people that he impacted?
So I came to the SJC. He was my chief. So I learned about, what the SJC was and what it was about and how it worked from him and the way he led. And he really was a very, very, very good Chief Justice. Not only was he brilliant, and, always I could walk down the hall and ask him any question and we'd work through things. But he just had a great sense of humor. He could laugh at himself. We would laugh in the consultation room. We would joke with each other and sort of tease each other, and he, was teased just right along with everybody else. And that's what I learned. I learned that we could enjoy each other's company. And I'm just so glad that my colleagues and I can enjoy each other's company. And we don't always agree, but all of us are trying to get to the right answer. That's the idea. That's what we're there for. And everyone takes that very seriously. But I think it's fair to say none of us take ourselves too seriously.
And anyone that watches the oral arguments can also kind of get that sense. There's a lot of joshing back and forth in between very, very direct questions. One of the reasons that I bring this up, of course, is that the SJC can feel very remote. And one of the reasons that it can be a little bit difficult for people to understand how the High Court impacts their lives is that it is digging into these very weighty policy topics. The language, even if it's as breezy as legal language can possibly get, can still be a bit removed. So, how do you think about how important it is for the High Court to be in the mind of the citizens of a state? They don't directly vote for the justices. So would you like it to be a little bit more front of mind, or is it okay when it's just a major decision like saying you can't have life without parole for those under 21? Because that tends to be when people find out about what the
Yeah.
SJC is doing.
You know, I can't say I was spending a whole lot of time thinking about what the SJC was doing before I became a judge. I wouldn't expect people to worry about what we're doing, and I think that's perhaps best. Um, we're just trying to make the system work. And I mean, the whole system, our government, we're just part of our system of government. Um, and so do I think what we do is important? I do, absolutely. But I don't want people to worry about what's the SJC going to do. We're going to do what the law says we should do, you know, and look at what we've said before and see what we should be saying now. Um, and I don't think people should have it front of mind. And if we change something because we think that that's appropriate based on the law and our state constitution, absolutely, I want people to know, but I don't want people to be worried about it.
Mm. And I'm glad also that you brought up the state constitution because there are there has always been, but there is particularly now, a bit of a complicated relationship between the federal court system and the state court system. Even as long as I've been covering the SJC, one of the areas that's really gone back and forth has been on Second Amendment law, where the SJC will rule that something is constitutional, and then the US Supreme Court, which of course gets to decide what the law is under the federal constitution, says no, try again, and then the next time something comes before you folks, you have to adapt to that. So it is also a broad question, so I do apologize for that. But to what extent has it impacted your work on the state's high court to see kind of the increasing politicization of the federal judiciary, because that's obviously been reflected in polls as something that is contributing to a lack of confidence in the judiciary at large? It is considered a political institution, even though the longtime reputation has been of mostly a place that quote unquote calls balls and strikes.
So this is where it's almost easier because we follow the law, right? If the Supreme Court says that this is what the Second Amendment means, we follow that. So there's no real, oh, what are we going to do? We know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to listen to what the Supreme Court says about the U.S. Constitution. But the SJC, is the body that interprets the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, and that's our purview, and we do that.
Mm. One thing that's been interesting kind of going through your biography is you also have a few different points of connection to, I'd say, quasi-independent or traditionally independent institutions. Harvard Law School, thinking about educational institutions. The judiciary, of course, a branch of government that's generally separate from executive functions. And also the state of Massachusetts, because federalism system gives, certain rights to states and certain rights to the federal government. How are you thinking about the concept and the importance of independence in institutions right now during a period of time where there is increased pressure from the federal executive branch on these institutions that used to be able to sort of check and balance each other?
Yeah. Again, here in Massachusetts, it's business as usual. We have a system of checks and balances, which work very well here. Um, I feel like the three branches of government, for the most part, are all rowing in the same direction here in Massachusetts. And so I've always seen the judiciary as being independent, and certainly here in the state, and it will continue to be independent because that's how our system's set up.
Where does a loss of faith in the judiciary come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of different things you can point to. Certainly, things that are happening out in the world, out in this country. I think people see things on TV and extrapolate. And again, people just don't have a connection with. They don't have first person contact with the court system. And if you do and you have a bad experience, that makes things difficult as well.
And how do you think about the way that the SJC not just interprets the law, but also sets policy? Because one of the functions of the SJC is if lawmakers say, hey, we're not sure what the Constitution says about something, how do we interpret religious funding for schools, for instance? They turn to you and you all take your time and you tell them, well, this is our understanding of that. So, how do you square the idea of just interpreting the law with the fact that the law is also a living, breathing document and legislators change it, which means it's open to reinterpretation?
That's what makes it interesting, really. You look at the you look at the Declaration of Rights, you look at the statutes that have been passed, and you look at society and where we are and whether there need to be changes made based on the passage of time. So, yeah, I mean, it just reminds me of what a great job I have. I feel very, very privileged to be where I am.
And the last thing that I wanted to hit while we've still got time is every justice, every court seems to kind of carve out areas of special interest, either because it's a particular time in society, so certain cases kind of come to them more often, or it's an area of real passion that might be something like social justice and equity in law. One of the major things that you've really pushed for is work on the restorative justice front. So I suppose the last thing is, are there particular threads in what the court system can do or certain areas of legal debate right now that are really compelling to you?
Yeah, I don't know. We sort of take the cases as they come to us. So, uh, we look at what when we are on the hearing list committee looking at what cases we might want to take. There are ones that, no court has spoken on as of yet. It may be statutory interpretation that's important. There may be a difference in opinion between two panels of the appeals court. So we sort of look at it that way. We don't say, "Oh, I'm interested in this topic, so let's do this." But I do feel that one of the cool things I get to do as chief is look at what do I want to have left here, when I'm done. And one of the great things that Chief Justice Gantz left us with was, he was very passionate about social justice and the criminal justice system, and which is really important that a white man was interested in that because he was listened to. And so when I became chief, I sort of wanted to figure out what is it that I can do, because obviously that's something that's very important to me. What can I do to further that? And I really like the concept of restorative justice because it involves the victims who often don't have a voice in matters in court, and it gives offenders an opportunity to understand what they've done, and how their actions have impacted others and make amends for it. And so I just think that's really important. And I just will say that I am going this weekend to Norfolk State Prison for a restorative justice retreat. I've been a couple of other times, and it's really been transformational. Like hearing from the people who are in, but also participating. We're all together. I'm not there as a judge. I'm there as a participant. The facilitators are lifers, and they do such an amazing job of facilitating a circle where everybody sort of answers a question or a prompt, and you just share with one another, and you see the humanity in each other. And so I just think it's important for people to have that opportunity, offenders, victims, and the rest of the community. So anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing that continue.
Thank you again to Chief Justice Budd for joining me on the Codcast. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jennifer Smith. Our producer is Charlie Cazella. Leave a rating and review wherever you're hearing this now if you want to help other people find us, but also email codcast@commonwealthbeacon.org if you ever want to get in touch directly. We'll be back next week.